The one with all the cheesecakes is the 11th episode of the 7th season of Friends. This one is directed by Gary Harrison, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And this one always makes me so hungry for cheesecake. Whenever I watch this, I can taste the cheesecake. Definitely not one to watch on an empty stomach. I'll talk about the cheesecake part of the narrative first, then I'll talk about Ross and Monica, and then I'll talk about Phoebe and Joey. And everybody has a bit of the narrative here. And the cheesecake story is actually the first scene. And Rachel walks into the apartment and Chandler is eating cheesecake out of a box. It turns out the box was delivered to the door, but it was the wrong address. It was for a neighbour downstairs. Chandler had already opened the box before looking at the address. And by that point, well, he determined that the cheesecake was his. And he forces a piece into Rachel's mouth and she immediately realises that actually it might just be the best cheesecake ever. And they both start eating the cheesecake. And the second cheesecake arrives because obviously the neighbour would have had to have reported that the cheesecake never arrived, so she would have been sent a free cheesecake. They sent it to the wrong address again. And they fight over eating it. And ultimately what happens is the cheesecake spills onto the floor and they're left, Chandler and Rachel, on the floor, forking at this cheesecake. And Ross comes along and joins in. And to be fair, it doesn't look like they're eating the bits that have touched the floor. They're just eating the bits on the top of the cheesecake. I guess that makes it okay. It does look absolutely delicious. It looks thick. It looks like a very thick cheesecake, but it always makes me so hungry for cheesecake, and I rather enjoy that part of the narrative. Then we come to Ross and Monica, and this one feels a little flat. To begin with, it's okay. There's a bit of a mystery. Ross is going to cousin Frannie's wedding, but Monica hasn't been invited for some reason, and Monica decides that she will go as Ross's +1. She goes to the wedding. One of my favourite lines that I did like is when she's talking about blood relatives and Ross says, "Stop saying blood to strangers," which I rather enjoyed. But we find out that the reason she wasn't invited is because Frannie's getting married to Stuart. Monica used to have a relationship of some kind with Stuart, and honestly that felt a little flat. And not really a valid reason to not invite her, or at least not ask her if she wanted to go. Also, if your cousin's getting married, surely you'd find out who they're getting married to at some point. So it just felt really weak and not that interesting. So the journey with this part of the narrative I liked, but the destination was very boring. Phoebe and Joey is quite interesting because Phoebe and Joey meet routinely to talk about everybody else, which is quite funny. And Joey left Phoebe a note saying he couldn't make their latest date because he had an actual date. And Phoebe is quite rightly annoyed at Joey because they'd had plans. And she said to him, "I can't just be a way to kill time until you meet someone better," which I think is absolutely brilliant. So true. A wonderful quote. Definitely a strong takeaway from this. And Joey agrees that it probably wasn't a good thing for him to do. Let's go out to dinner. He'll even pay for himself. And fortunately or unfortunately, David is back from Minsk. David, of course, played by Hank Azaria. And Phoebe clearly loves David, but she's got a date with Joey, and this is the last chance she'd get to see David for however long. And she wants to blow Joey off, but after her big speech, how can she do that? Well, I think it's executed very well. And I will say, had Phoebe just explained everything to Joey, he probably would have been okay with it, but there's a really beautiful scene that comes out of it. Phoebe obviously does meet with David, and they have a very emotional goodbye. They say, "I love you," without actually saying "I love you," and it's really emotional. And Phoebe turns around and Joey has been watching, and she's clearly so distraught, and she tells Joey to just not have a go at her at this moment, and he realises that she's in a lot of pain, and he's there to comfort her and support her, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful moment, and genuinely getting emotional at it. It's very, very well done, and it's honestly quite rare for us to see Phoebe being that upset, and it's very effective. So it's a really good episode. Personal highlights would absolutely be just the whole cheesecake in general. I can taste it so much, but I can't work out what cheesecake I'm tasting, because for as long as I've been watching this, I've been able to taste a certain cheesecake whenever I've watched it, and I can't work out which one it is. or which cheesecake I had that I seem to be drawing upon whenever I watch this, but made me very hungry for cheesecake. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. The story with Ross and Monica definitely felt a little flat and a little boring, but it wasn't too bad. And then, of course, we have a beautiful moment first with Phoebe and David, and then with Phoebe and Joey. And ultimately, the one with all the cheesecakes is a delicious episode of Friends. Some really strong moments, some slightly weaker moments, but ultimately still a really great episode.